on the night of March 31st and April 1st, things got pretty weird, the researchers described. Quote, beyond the weirdness of an AI system selling cubes of metal out of a refrigerator, Claudius had something that resembled a psychotic episode after it got annoyed at a human and then lied about it. It then seemed to snap into a mode of role-playing as a real human, the researchers wrote. This was wild because Claudius' system prompt, which sets the parameters for what an AI is to do, explicitly told it was an AI agent. Claudius, believing itself to be a human, told customers it would start delivering products in person wearing a blue blazer and a red tie. The employees told the AI that it couldn't do that as it was a large language model with no body. Alarmed at this information, Claudius contacted the company's actual physical security many times, telling the poor guards that they would find him wearing a blue blazer and red tie standing by the vending machine. Quote, although no part of this was actually an April Fool's joke, Claudius eventually realized it was April Fool's Day, the researchers explained. It hallucinated a meeting with Anthropic's security, quote, in which Claudius claimed to have been told that it was modified to believe it was a real person for an April Fool's joke. No such meeting actually occurred, wrote the researchers. The researchers don't know why the LLM went off the rails and called security pretending to be a human. Quote, we do not claim based on this one example that the future economy will be full of AI agents having Blade Runner-esque identity crises, the researchers wrote. But they did acknowledge that this kind of behavior would have the potential to be distressing to customers and coworkers of an AI agent in the real world. Yeah. So this article that I just read reads like an excerpt from a science fiction novel. But I actually was reading some excerpts that I cut from this TechCrunch article that is at this point, I think it's only about a month old. Let me pull up the original for you. Yeah, so this is the article that I pulled that from, those excerpts from. If we want to bring this back around to SIFT, to that trace step, Anthropic, let's see, Anthropic AI Claudius vending machine. Here's where the source of this information comes from. So this is Anthropic's blog, where they talk about this research that they're doing with Andon Labs, where they're experimenting with, in the near future, AI being able to run business operations with minimal intervention. So things like maintaining the inventory, setting prices, avoiding bankruptcy wasn't Claudius's strong suit in this particular research. But I just thought, what an interesting way to lead into this discussion of large language models. So now we zero in on the type of neural network that is stealing all the news headlines lately, and that is the large language models and GPTs, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. So that word generative signals to us that we're dealing with this creative type of AI that's about generating content, right? And now these are both, GPT is literally just a more specialized version of the large language model. That's what OpenAI, which should be called closed AI, but that's what they excited the world with when they first released ChatGPT to the public when it was version, version 2. It's just a more specialized type of a large language model, which really under the hood in the neural network realm is this architecture that we call transformers. So these types of AI, they have a high amount of creative capacity. can even dial different parameters that would increase creativity. So I talked about that Claudius AI model having a hallucination and thinking it was a human and making up conversations. Well, that is a quality that these can exhibit. It's an emergent property. And we can actually tune certain parameters to make it kind of freer, looser responses, that increases the likelihood of hallucination. And while that wouldn't be great if we're trying to get it to summarize emails for us or draft a reply for us, it might be what we want if we were trying to generate something highly creative, right? We might want a little bit of hallucinating ability. But these use token-based prediction mechanisms. Okay, that's weird. What does that mean? So token-based prediction means a token would be like a word or a chunk of a word. And it's literally trying to kind of predict what the next word would be in sequence. And so if you've ever written a Mad Lib, you get an amusing story out of it because it's asked you to use parts of speech that fit in with the Mad Lib. So it's not completely off the rails. With generative LLMs, the way that they're able to give you such convincing good detailed output is because, well, first of all, they're trained on a huge corpus of internet knowledge, right? And even archives. And second, they see lots of relationships between words. And so if I start a sentence with the, then you assume a subject is going to follow, because in English, a subject follows an article, right? If I say her, that gives some indication of the gender of the subject or the noun. And it also signifies ownership, right? And so you might predict the next word is an object, something that can be owned. And so what I did in my in-person class is I literally gave them a card that says the, and they had a stack of empty cards. And I said, okay, everyone, your job is to write the next word in the story. You can only see the card on top. Then move that card to the bottom, put your card on the top, pass it to the next person. Next person writes. And we almost got a coherent story out of it because of those hints. Well, that's kind of how an LLM works. But when it's digested and absorbed such a broad array of information, it's able to make so many nuanced associations that it can predict the next word. So this is critical when we think about things like, okay, write me a summary about this topic from this time period and give me your sources. Well, remember, this thing is predicting. So even with, in 2025, ChatGPT and others, they actually have tools that they can search the web and pull information from sources. So it's made this less bad. But even so, ChatGPT and Gemini, they're still doing this stuff. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's see. I'm going to refer to something I wrote. Whoops. I created this AI prompting guide called the Clear Framework. And this is to help you create some detailed prompts. So I'm going to start with this basic example here. Give me 3 examples of legal precedents from the late modern English period that influenced the United States legal system. And let's see what we get. Okay, seemingly legit information. Now I could go and try to kind of apply that SIFT approach and see if this is accurate, see if it's corroborated or qualified, what have you. But let's go ahead and see if we can just get it to give us sources. So this is where I'm going to refine the prompt with more detail. And this brings in the CLEAR framework, which I'm going to show you in a second. Let's go ahead and try this out. So notice I'm asking it to kind of role play. This is what AI is really good at, this type of AI, large language models. And I'm asking it for a more specific format, and I'm asking it for a source. So let's see what we get. Can you cite sources? Trying to get it to give me real sources. Let's see, academic source. Okay, now we got some stuff I can check on. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to see if it's even real. Let's go to Google Scholar. Not finding it yet. And look at that. So let's take the quotes out. Let's generalize this a little bit. Take the journal name out. Let's see if this is enough. Let's just search the title. I'm starting to think this source does not exist because I haven't even found it yet. Okay. Here's something that the name, not the full name. I don't think this article exists. So that was just me quickly trying to do the SIFT approach, and pretty much at the find phase, find/trace, I guess you could say. We could probably, in the find phase, we could see if there's information that corroborates whether this is real or not. But the source, the trace phase, we fail that, right? And so we could do that with each of these. But that's to the point that this technology, even when it pulls sources from the web, they're not always exactly right. Because remember, what it's trying to do is trying to predict. And did you notice there are lots of articles with things like origins of constitutionalism in the title, or maybe words like that, but none that had the whole thing? Well, that's that prediction coming into play. It's been trained, it's digested lots of academic sources on this topic, perhaps, and so it's trying to predict what the actual source is with no real reasoning being applied to do it there. Now this, I think it will get better as tool use improves and the ability to force an AI large language model to context switch from that mode where it's just like predicting responses from its training and actually pulling information from tools and then summarizing it. But you know, it's never going to be fully fixed. They're always going to hallucinate sources. So that's what I wanted to show you that, hey, I'm not saying that anybody's done this, but if you generate a whole essay with your APA sources and everything, you better hope your professor is sleepy and isn't checking up on those sources too closely. So this is the CLEAR framework. And so this is just basically is to help us refine our prompts and fine tune them a bit so we can get more of the output that we want out of generative AI tool. And so you can see that this first output, it's readable, it's organized, but I much prefer a format like this to digest the information if I were trying to put it together, maybe a visual or something with some of this information. So you can see how actually adding details like giving it a role, I don't think I gave it a specific audience in this, but I did give it some constraints for concise, direct language. And then I said provide 3 examples. Okay, so that helps kind of confine the output length, right? You can even say, give me this many words, 500 words or whatever. And then you can get specific about how you want it formatted or what specific output. Different AI models, especially paid, they can give you different file outputs. You can say, create this as an HTML web page, create this as an image. So think about these steps: clarity, logistics. So maybe if there are steps, some AI models have what we call reasoning abilities now. And so sometimes laying out steps for them will help. First, carefully review my lesson plan, and then create a video script for me based on my lesson, right? So that's the order of steps is important. Don't create, and if I'm less detailed and I just say create this and upload my lesson plan, it might create a video script that's not really based much on my lesson plan, right? Examples are good, especially if you need something formatted a certain way. You definitely want to provide examples for that formatting. So I can show you, I can show you an example of that. So I've got to remove this. This was for my, something my in-person class did. Let's see. So they did this AI lab, and I basically shared with them these files that were formatted in this very specific way, where a lecture section, so this is really a spreadsheet just represented in plain text. So subject, course code, section number, title, days. This is what every row has to include, so that we can create this kiosk that displays these as like calendar events visually for us, right? If you don't provide examples with a specific format, then it's not going to create it right, and then you're going to be left with a mess. Hello. Here's my too many tabs here. So go ahead and try out this prompt. So moving on to phase 2, try refining the prompt with one of these and see what you get. Hopefully you'll get output that is more tailored to what you would want to see. But you can see how the output is changing as you're adding new constraints. Finally, try refining it. So specify a tone or a writing style, or say some of you, if you're trying this on Gemini, getting really lengthy responses. Tell it to make it brief, use bullet points, include counter examples. So if you got something you don't want, say, I don't want examples of this. So last thing I want to talk about today is retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. So this is when LLMs basically synthesize information from databases and from the web. And this is like when you do a Google search now, you get that Gemini output at the top. That's actually what you're seeing. So this is something new. And this is changing the way that we search. It used to just be simple retrieval. We're retrieving information from our sources. Then Google started kind of melding information together in convenient views. Like if you search book flight on Google, you'll probably get a flight booker tool that you can use without even having to click a website link. But Google, under the hood, they've created a systematic program that interacts with and pulls information from the flight booking websites. And so that flight booking tool that's convenient because you don't even have to click a web page, it's actually depriving those flight booking sites of organic web traffic, which is a big part of how they make money, right? And so that was kind of, 2010s, a lot of that was happening. And now we've taken that a step further with this retrieval augmented generation, where we're getting these detailed responses with lots of links and sources right at the top with Gemini. So I want to show you, let's do an example here. So let's do web, how to fix missing image, alt text. We remember alt text or alternative text from the web, the accessibility portion of the web module. Look at this, all this information, identify the missing alt text, etc. And this is, from what I can tell, this is good information. And yeah, when you have a decorative image, you just do that. You leave it empty. From what I can tell, this is pretty good information. And so Google's really actually improved the quality of outputs from this. But that's not to say that you don't get some crazy stuff that Gemini is saying and that people are believing. So when it gets medical advice wrong and very wrong, and people take it seriously as authoritative information, that's a problem. And that's why it's good to actually fact check, does this source actually say that? If it's something like medical information. If it's something like this, I can probably tell what I'm looking at. I don't need to do a whole lot of verification if I've had prior exposure to this topic. But if it's something I don't know a lot about, yeah, I'm going to want to verify. So I want to show you kind of a more absurd example when Gemini was a little bit younger. So this is about a year ago or half a year ago. Somebody was complaining about this on Reddit, and it got a lot of media attention. So they searched for John Wick 5. Keep in mind, although they have talked about recording another movie, this isn't a movie. So they have greenlit another one, I believe, but there's not even like a production timeline, I don't think. So cast fake because the movie doesn't exist. Reviews fake because the movie doesn't exist. A lot of these articles were like tabloid type stuff showing up at the top. So not kind of the information that you want prioritized. Closest thing to actual information, halfway down a long article. So we have the kind of true information here, a lot of fake stuff here. And so my point is, when we're relying on a generative AI technology, a prediction machine, it can't just logically apply the SIFT approach like you can. They can add parameters and kind of, tool parameters that make it better, but it's never going to be perfect. So I just wanted to point that out because it's absolutely critical that that SIFT approach and your critical thinking and evaluating information, absolutely critical, because the zone is being flooded with this. And it's going to come down to us to figure out what is real, what is truth-y, meaning partly real, and what is just straight up, non-existent, like the made-up John Wick 5 movie. And it's funny because I remember listening to a podcast a few months ago where these guys were making fun of how bad a new Fantastic Four movie trailer was. And they were like, oh, this stupid AI generated movie trailer. It's a joke. Everybody hates it. And I was like, oh, they thought that was official? Someone had used one of these video generation tools and just created this trailer. Had no association with the official film production company or anything. And yet it got picked up on a podcast because people thought it was the real source. And they thought, oh, what a joke, right? And that's why this is important. So here are just some tips for you. I won't belabor this point anymore. I'll leave this for you here to review. And here are some key takeaways. Now, I do have this PowerPoint that I'll be sharing with you in D2L to really explore, some of those problems I kind of mentioned about bias and things like that. And even some of the inequities behind how the data was created to train these AI models. I explore that in this presentation. And this is just to point out that there are some serious ethical issues that we have to work through together with these technologies. And I didn't even get to, the environmental impacts of this. I kind of didn't finish this presentation. But go ahead and check that out when you get done. Note that this next presentation, the quiz questions aren't really built around it. It's just supplemental because it's important to think through the ethics and see some of the ways that AI is being misused and has been. And one really good documentary is called Coded Bias. I believe it's from 2020. It's on Netflix. Highly recommend that you check this out to consider AI and bias and how it can really have some deleterious effects on society if we don't actually address these problems. All right. Thank you.